Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Sanders, and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today, what I wanted to do was to take a look at two really top brands. One is Patek Philippe, and the other is Lange and Söhne. And I got to tell you, when I started looking at them, I was expecting to be, oh wow, but I ran into some interesting kinds of things that I really started wondering about. So I have a Patek Philippe. I'm not prejudiced toward them. I have some German watches as well, so I'm not sort of leaning one way or the other. But it just was sort of surprised me, especially after a recent look I did at some of the top-notch watches in the in the world. So let's start off with what I wanted to do. I want to take watches that seem to be pretty close. In other words, it's sort of like, well, this is Tweedledee or Tweedledum. What do you like? And first of all, most of them are really very expensive. And on the other hand, there's sort of a mystery of what Lange is doing with hairsprings right now, and also certain choices that Patek Philippe made. And let me start with those. And it's probably, my position is by no means an established one. In fact, a lot of people may think I'm nuts, but I wanted to tell you what I think. Let's start with the Calatrava, the 5277J. Now I have a Calatrava, but it's a vintage one, and it works. It keeps great time, and it works very well. The thing about this is that this particular watch, there are a lot of things I really like about it. I like the whole idea of having a solid back that you can pop open and take a look and see, look at the movement. And this particular movement isn't the most interesting one. It's a 4 hertz, the 324 SC. Now, one of the things is that I spent a lot of time looking at what Patek Philippe put into their hairsprings and their escapements, and they're using silicon-based materials. Now, it was sort of interesting, the rationale they had. They said, well, you realize that at one time clocks were made out of wood, they're wooden gears and so forth. And he said, and then they went to different kinds of metals. And finally, they were at sort of all metal kinds of hairsprings and movement parts. And he says, and silicon is simply a continuation of that. And here's the problem that I saw with that particular line of logic. What they left out was in the 60s, I guess, or 70s, when quartz came along, and suddenly quartz was a huge improvement. There's no two ways about that. Okay, over timekeeping, quartz was far more accurate than was the old mechanical. But the collectors were the ones, people like me, possibly like yourself, if you're a watch collector of mechanical watches, you wanted to keep mechanical. Now I've gone round and round on the Grand Seiko spring drive. Basically, they generate power through the movement of the wrist, very much like an automatic, to drive a quartz movement. And to me, I was, man, I don't want that. And I feel the same way about silicon. Now, what's wrong with silicon? Well, absolutely nothing. There's nothing wrong with quartz either, for that matter, or smartwatches. I've got this phone I'm recording on right now that does more stuff than I ever dreamed could be done. So this is something that I just see, I want to talk about, and why silicon. And I was looking into it, and one of the things is silicon was simply easier to develop if you're developing a hairspring. Hairsprings like little threads, and you have to do a lot of things to them in the production of hairsprings, and it's not easy, and it is expensive. But using silicone, there were a number of steps that you could cut down the amount of what it cost to make them, and they were far more reliable than your metal hairsprings of different types. Well, like I said, the same could be true of quartz. Okay, so enough said on that. So let's take a look at these. At the movement is on the Patek Philippe is the 324 SC, which is a 4 hertz movement, which is a very common type of movement. Now on the Lange, I wanted something comparable, and so I looked at the Lange and all of the Lange prices, as well as the Patek Philippe prices, were the prices they had on their websites. Now, all of the prices on the Lange website were in euros, which I converted to dollars just for comparative reasons. And also I had to take off the VAT prices. And so it ends up to be very similar. What you see in euros is actually, you almost have a 1-to-1 to dollars when you take away the VAT prices. So that was that. Now, this particular one, the Lange one, is the hairsprings are getting that's getting very blurry right now. At one time, they used Navirox hairsprings, and these are made of cobalt, nickel, chromium, iron, titanium, and beryllium. And okay, those are all metal, and good for them. They are owned by Swatch, and so people say, "Oh, you're using a Swatch hairspring." They happen to be bought by Swatch, and they're an excellent hairspring. The problem is that they decided not to sell them to anybody else. Well, there's some other ones that are really excellent. Notably, H. Moser at Sea has what's called, I think, Strauser or Straumann, I believe, hairspring. Well, Straumann is the name of the guy who developed the Navirox. But the H. Moser hairspring, there's a company that's part of them called Precise Engineering. They were the ones who made the hairspring, and it is primarily made of niobium and titanium. Now, while we're talking about this, and I'm going to finish talking, and it'll be it, the Rolex does have a silicone-based hairspring as well, but their primary one is not. Their primary hairspring, I think it's parachrome, I believe is what they call it, is a combination of niobium and chromium. So again, you have an all-metal hairsprings, and if you go take a look at your Rolexes, you're going to find more parachrome than any other thing in there. So having an all-metal one, now what happened with Lange, they were bought by the Richemont group, and there were a lot of other companies in the Richemont group that had their own hairsprings. And so then they wanted to bring them together and have Val Fleurier make them, which is not a problem because most companies outsource or get them from outsources, and very few of them have their own hairspring. There are exceptions. For example, Beauvais, they made everything. So anyway, so looking at these two watches, one is hand wound, one is automatic, and for the price, I have there's things about both of them that I like a lot, but I happen to like hand wound more than I do the automatics. That's just me. But then when I was looking at it, it said $32,782. That's a lot of money. There's a Glashütte original called the Pano Reserve for $7,920. That pretty similar to the Lange one. Now I'm not saying they copied it or they did anything sneaky. I'm simply saying there is a watch for a heck of a lot less than that. But this is true with all the watches we're going to look at. But this one reminded me so much of the Glashütte. I thought I'd mention it. Okay, so when you look at these two watches, I don't know. I love my Calatrava. It's an older hand wound one and it keeps perfect time, but I don't know. I am not sure about either one of these, to tell you the truth. I might go out and get a Glashütte instead. Now, this next two are a couple of what I call sort of luxury sports watches, very much luxury. And the one from Patek Philippe is the Aquanaut, and the Aquanaut is there. You can get them with rubber or metal. Like you probably can get them with gator straps too. But I have the metal one, is because this is most divers for an Aquanaut are desk divers. These are sort of, like I said, sort of luxury sports divers watches, and again, you have the 324 SC movement, great movement, has a certain type of hairspring that, okay. Then the Odysseus. This is the Lange's sort of version of the sports watch, a luxury sports watch, and they have something on there I like, and I like the bigger dates. I mean, for all practical purposes, you have a lot more visual for practical visuals on that. So if that's something that's important to you, you want to know at the 25th, and you want to know it's Friday, it's a good watch for that. The Caliber L155.1 Datamatic is another 4 hertz watts. The one on the first one we looked at, I believe, was 3 hertz. Okay, now this next two these are a couple travel watches, and the Patek Philippe 5230R is part of their complications line of watches, and this one's $52,040. And I love it. I just looking at it. This is a gorgeous watch. I'm of two minds with the micro rotors. On the one hand, I really like them because they help you keep the watch nice and thin. On the other hand, they don't give you as much room to have a nice big balance wheel. So, but this one is interesting because it is a 3 hertz watch, and it's I don't know what it is about that, but I just think it's really a very attractive and very clear travel time watch. Now the Lange one, called the Time Zone, this one is I like it too. It's both of them are quite expensive, $52,000 for the Patek and $47,500 for the Lange. The Lange, though, again, one of the things I like is hand wound, and both are in rose gold, and they both also have a 3 hertz movement, except the one with Lange is hand wound. And of these two, I simply like the looks of the dial on the Patek Philippe better. But one of the things, going back to the Lange, you can see the date. You can just look at it without having to, on there is no date on the on this particular Patek Philippe. Okay, moving right along. This next two are chronographs. Now, there's more than one Patek Philippe chronograph, but I've always associated chronographs with more of a sporty kind of watch. And on the Lange, the 1815 chronograph, again, they too have more than a single chronograph. Both of them are extremely expensive, over $50,000. The Patek Philippe is almost $60,000. The thing that I like about the 1815 is that it has 18,000 VPH, or 2.5 hertz. And on a chronograph, there's where you have a lot of stuff going on, uh, keeping the time, and then also timing something with a chronograph. You don't want to burn up all of the spring time you have. All right, so they brought it down to 2.5 hertz. Now on the Patek Philippe, they have 4 hertz, but again, they have the rotor going, so they don't have to worry about it unwinding and being out of luck. So in order to have a decent length of time to run on the 1815, plus working with all of these different parts moving around, the lower hertz, I think, would help that. I don't think it would hurt the Patek Philippe either, to tell you the truth. Of these two, again, I'm not a chronograph fan, and so it's like, yeah, it's one of those things that you have to look at and just like this or that. I love the looks of the plain Nautilus. Just a great looking watch. I understand they're discontinuing it. I have no idea why, but that's what they decided to do. Now, this final two to take a look at is the Golden Ellipse and the 1815. These are some smaller watches, and I thought, well, we'll take a look at a couple smaller ones. And the Ellipse is one that I've always, the Ellipse and the golden, well, the golden part is not because it's golden, it's rather the golden ratio. A lot of watchmakers and designers are really big fans of the golden ratio, which is about 1.6 to 1. So if you have one side that is this amount, and then you make the next one 1.6 bigger, then that would be a golden ratio. The hands on it would be another place where you can find it. It's something designers use a lot. Parmigiani, this is my Parmigiani hemisphere. This one has the hands, the hour hand and the minute hand are a 1 to 1.6 ratio on that. And so when the golden part of it, of the golden ellipse, is the ellipse is the shape, and golden was for the golden ratio on it. It has a caliber 240, that's 3 hertz, with a mini rotor on there. Nice thin watch. It's a beautiful watch. It's not the most popular one though. I'm surprised that Patek Philippe has kept it in line. They got rid of the gondolas. I just love gondolas, but that was their decision. They didn't listen to me at all. Now the 1815, to me, this is a great watch. I love the 1815. This one, if it were bigger, and they simply took exactly the same one, put it out to about 38, or 38, 39, 40. I think that would be the ideal, but the price on this one is really pretty good. It's $14,729. Now I know for $15,000 is not exactly a bargain basement, certainly compared to the Ellipse it is. But this is a watch I really like, and I would have, if this thing were bigger, this exact watch, I think it would really, it's a kind of watch that you can really choose between it and then a small second Calatrava or something. Well, listen, this one, I found myself, I'm gonna stir up and have a big controversy over this, but to me it's not quite that easy, because there's a lot of stuff going on. I think on the one hand, Lange is dealing with God knows what Richemont wants them to do, and how the sort of entanglement with everything else. Perhaps Val Fleurier will be the answer to sort things out. And on the Patek Philippe, always been a good brand, and I just wonder about the silicon, because they say, well, they have all of their stuff. Well, by that logic, you could have plastic or nylon plates on the movements and say, wow, that's an advancement. So anyway, I'd really like to hear your comments, your thoughts on this. And until next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Society, the Art and Science of Watch Collection.